Good day, Rise listeners. We're back again with another episode of Rise with Snalo Matubatuba. And today we'll be discussing navigating uncertainty. So, if you are someone who is actually going through something and you're actually very uncertain about it, about what is to come, and about how you're going to navigate it, this podcast is for you. Please remember to subscribe, like, share. If you share this podcast, you're actually going to make us do more content that is actually going to help us and uplift us and grow us in our respective fields. So today we are discussing uncertainty, navigating uncertainty. And today's title is basically how can we actually not see uncertainty as a roadblock, not see uncertainty as the end, but rather see it as a launching pad. And in deciding or in discussing that and deciding what your future holds, we have to look at why we fear the unknown, you know. And fearing the unknown is natural. It comes easy. You don't know what is coming. You don't know how you're going to react to it. You don't know what it's going to do to you. And especially because we are a generation that is, very particular and very perfectionist. And we always want to do things right. That is only natural for us to feel that way. We are high performers. We always want the best out of every situation. And that is natural. So you should not feel as if you're doing a bad thing by feeling that way. I myself have went through that a lot, where I actually don't know what the future holds, and that actually stresses me out at times. But when you are uncertain about things, when you feel as though you don't know what is going on, that is usually a sign of growth. You are growing at a level where you don't know what is to come, and that is okay. So today I'll be giving a personal reflection about a period where I went through something which I was in a period of uncertainty, and I'll also look at the psychology behind our discomfort with uncertainty. And what I would like the theme of today's episode be about is uncertainty is the only certainty that there is. And uncertainty breeds possibility. So in my story that I want to share comes a time where I was doing my undergraduate degree, and in the last year I did not have funding. And I didn't know where I was going to get the funding. So I don't want to get into the details or mention names about what happened with my funding. But basically, I lost my funding through negligence, not on my part. And that then put me in a dark place, because I was stressing that I'm not going to be able to graduate. Because I'm not going to be able to graduate, I am not going to be able to then start my articles, And it's something that I had not dealt with before. Like, funding was not an issue for me. Starting university, I always had funding. I always had, always had an allowance. My raise was paid. Like, everything was smooth starting out. And then in my final year, what would usually happen is my funder would delay on payments. So I thought, okay, that is just a situation. They're going to make a once-off payment. And it so happened that my institution would cover those allowances in the interim before my funder pays. So in the first half of the year, I didn't see anything. I received my allowances. And then when I inquired about this, I then found out that, okay, actually I am blocked from funding. And then I tried to follow up with this thing, right? And I didn't know where it was going to end up, and it just wasn't being resolved. And it took a huge toll on me because I was very stressed of what was to come because I didn't know what it looked like. And it actually had an impact even on my studies because I would always be fixated and thinking about this thing, but it didn't really, it was so stressful for me. So I then decided that, okay, even though this is the case, I need to continue with life, you know. And in continuing with life, I need to give my best in continuing with my life. So you might be going through a period of uncertainty where you feel like you don't know where you're going. And what I could say is that things compound. So what you do today does mean something in the long run. What you do the next week does mean something in the long run. So I decided to focus on the now and not be fixated on who was going to pay for my funding, what was going to happen, you know, because I wasn't secure like that. I was not comfortable with having this hanging issue, right? So in going through things, be it career changes, be it certain training that, you know, is going to end soon and you don't know, and having that frustration can lead to you being so stressed that you cannot process it to a point where it will affect your daily functioning and your performance, you know, in other spheres. For instance, if you are at school or if you are studying or if you're now pursuing that business, or even if you are at work and maybe you are awaiting a certain promotion, because you are so fixated on the end result, you can end up affecting what you have to do now. You can end up jeopardizing that very thing that is waiting for you at the end. So I urge you right now that in whatever that you are doing, in whatever that you are into right now, focus on today and get better at today and make sure that you kill it right now so that by the time you get there, you will have already, you know, gained something positive, gained something that is going to contribute to your growth, that is actually going to help you. You know, I've missed out on experiences in my life, and you know, looking back in final year, I was so fixated on things that were resolved within 3 days. For instance, my funding. Funny story. So I was not funded, right, as I said earlier on. And then I inquired about this. I kept on going to the offices and stuff like that. But then what then happened was I made one phone call. One phone call towards the end. I think I had a week left of studies and I was to start my finals. I called, the account was settled the next day. And I felt as though I had lost. I had lost on an experience. I had lost on adventure. I had lost on spending time with my peers and enjoying my last year of university, right? And I'm using this example because it so happens in our lives that sometimes we're even stressed about money, that I'm not going to be able to pay for this. This course requires this amount of money, you know, and we forget that we are now so fixated on the future and we are not living in the present. So I urge you that in everything that you do, there will be challenges, right? Uncertainty is a challenge, but let's turn uncertainty into an asset. Let's make it be the driver that drives us forward in breeding possibility. Let's see what possibilities lie with us being uncertain about certain situations. So how do we reframe uncertainty from it being a threat to it being an opportunity? I think in discussing this point, it's all in the mind, honestly. And it being all in the mind, it requires a mindset shift, right? We need to embrace a mindset shift from thinking that, oh no, it's doomsday, it's done, because this thing is not sorted, you know, and we're not going to be able to do anything about it. That is not the case, you know. Certainty is an illusion. Life is fluid, things change on a daily, so you can't really be certain about anything. And I think, and I invite you to actually live in the present and not live in the future, because when we are so fixated and so worried and so frustrated about things being uncertain, it's because we are so fixated on the end prize or the end goal. It's important to keep your eyes on the prize, but you need to maintain a standard of being consistent, working hard, and trying to work towards that. But you should not see the picture being unclear as an indication of you not going to be able to receive that thing. You can only do so much, but you need to actually ensure that you are working hard and you are ensuring that the goal continues, right? The show continues. Just because there's this hindrance, for instance, money, does not mean that you should not continue with what you ought to do, with what you set out for yourself to do. But sometimes the challenges that we are faced with are they seem so large to us, to a point where we want to drop everything because that one thing is not resolved. But if we can actually empower ourselves by changing our mindset and saying, okay, there is this challenge, but let me use this very challenge to drive me in getting to that point. I'll give you an example with my story. I had a funding problem. I was supposed to use that very challenge to drive me to do better in my studies. As a matter of fact, I was so fixated on that even my academic average dropped, because I was so stressed that, okay, so who's gonna pay for my funding? So does this mean I'm not going to graduate? But it was resolved within a space of a day. So what I want to say is, when you're uncertain, you are operating in outside your comfort zone. And that is important, because that's where growth happens. Growth happens outside your comfort zone. And it's important that you need to sit with discomfort sometimes. You need to be in places, you need to be in challenges, you need to be challenged, so that you can really use that as your fuel to drive. Sometimes being in a challenge actually makes you introspect whether you really want something or not. And I think that is very important, And I want to leave you with 3 things, 3 R's. I want to put them as 3 R's. The first R is reflect. You need to reflect on what you have accomplished. You need to reflect on how you've grown from, where you come from, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is to reframe. Sometimes we get so fixated on things that we know that we are not willing to learn new things, that we're not willing to accept new things because we're so fixated on what has been ingrained in us, be it through our background, be it through other experiences that we've had. But we need to understand that life is constantly evolving. There's no issue with you changing your perspective on something, because you changing is actually you adapting, and you adapting is you growing. And when you're growing, you're actually advancing in what you are willing to pursue, or in whatever pursuit that you might be into. So it's important that in trying to reflect, as I said, the first R, you actually look at, where do I come from? How much have I learned? And in trying to then reframe is to actually, unlearn. You need to unlearn some things in order to move forward in life. And it's important that when we're navigating periods of uncertainty, some things that we have held dear to us as, core principles, they're actually change. I think in the past 2 years, I've changed so much that, I've seen myself even, I never understood it. But through changing, I thought it was negative. But I actually saw that it was actually positive because you lose people, your interests change. Sometimes you want to be alone, you don't want to be with anyone. And that is okay. That is part of growth. So I think I don't want to just talk about the what, but we also need to talk about the how. In navigating times of uncertainty, it's important that we confront uncertainty with confidence. Confidence that we are going to make it. Confidence that we are fearless. Confidence that we are actually moving into this thing with faith. Confidence that I've come so far, I'm not going to give up now. Even though there is fog, within this fog, I'm going to navigate this fog and I'm going to get to that prize that I'm seeking. And that is whatever goal that you are into. Sometimes we get so lost in being uncertain that we even give up the very dreams that we have, only to find out that, okay, this was just a hurdle. So look at uncertainty as just like another hurdle that you face, right? And we need to always remind ourselves of our values, of where we come from, of why we started things. You need to remember your why. And in setting yourself in remembering your values and staying true to your values, you then allow yourself not to be swayed by external circumstances. We can only control what is within. We cannot control what is external. And therefore, because we are going through things, we cannot then try and control the external. Things happen, and that is out of our control. But what is our reaction to those things happening to us? And that is why I'm saying you need to be fearless. You need to approach challenges and you need to pursue your things with faith that it's going to be okay. If it's not okay, it's fine. You will have learned, you will be wiser, and you will be more powerful, and you will have more greater ideas because you had this idea and this idea didn't work. You went for this thing and this thing did not work. So let's not use uncertainty as a means to an end because now it's uncertain. Okay, now this ends, right? And it's part of life. I can ask you 5 years ago, you were at a certain point, you know where you were 5 years ago. And let's now say, when you were at where you were 5 years ago and seeing yourself right now, did you have a clear, picture perfect, clear vision of where you are? I can assure you your answer is no. And that is life. That is how we need to live life. We need to give our best each day and forget about yesterday and not be so fixated on tomorrow or what the future holds. It's important to have a clear vision in terms of what you want to pursue, what your end goal is, what the prize is for you. I had an old episode, I think, that I recorded last year where I was speaking about keeping your eyes on the prize. That is okay because that actually structures you. And I'm not deviating from that. But what I'm saying is that because you want that thing, every inconvenience that you are faced with right now can actually, sway you off your path. And you shouldn't let that happen. In as much as you want that thing, you need to give yourself grace, give yourself some slack, and say that, look, I've set that goal. Nothing is going to remove that goal that I've set for myself. But what am I doing today? What am I working towards today, at this hour, in this minute, to get to that goal? Yes, there are storms, there are challenges, but let me navigate through them because that goal stands. That goal is not going to move there. So I leave you with that today. I think it's important that we are always intentional about how we want to get to certain points, but in dealing with challenges those challenges shouldn't sway us off. Because sometimes challenges actually expose how much we want something and how much we're willing to work towards it. So that was the second point that I had raised: reframing and changing your mindset in order for it to suit where you are going and the changing times and the circumstances that face you. The third thing is rising. You need to rise above your challenges. You cannot sulk over the challenges that you're facing. It's important to feel what you're feeling, to actually allow it to consume you at a point. But it's important for you to dust yourself off and get up and take on the challenges and take them on with positivity and take them on with confidence and take them on with rigor and enthusiasm that, look, I might be facing this challenge, but there's so much I can do. Let me do my best. Doing my best, I can assure you, at the end of the storm, you're going to come out a better person. Be it you received the prize or you didn't, you will come out a better person. You'll come out a stronger person. You'll come out a more learned person. You'll come out a more wiser person. You'll come out a more stronger person, in the sense that even if this wasn't maybe what you were supposed to get, but you will get something else, even better than what you had looked out for yourself. You know, sometimes I think about the things that I had set out for myself in my life. For instance, becoming a lawyer. My goal was to study. Upon studying, to get good training. I wasn't particular as to where or how that training should be, right? But through working hard, through focusing on the now, I was able to secure articles at one of the best law firms on the continent, arguably. And I think that is important. So it's important that sometimes block off everything and just focus on now. Because there's so much that we can control. There's so much within our means. There's so much that our bodies and our minds can take. If we focus on one thing, and that is bettering ourselves, and that is fine-tuning our crafts, that is important, and that is what we should aim for. So in our habits, we need to focus on them, in bettering them. We need to put in effort. And most importantly, I think this underlies everything, our attitude. Like sometimes, you know, you have a conversation with someone and they are so, they don't have energy. They don't have that attitude that, look, I'm going to make it. So if you've lost the war in your mind, you've lost everything, because you've already told yourself that, look, I'm not going to attain this. So what's the point? So attitude is everything. In us trying to become better people, in us trying to tackle the issues that we have and our challenges, our attitudes are everything. They underline everything, because it is the mind that informs things that you do. So it's important that before you start anything, when you're navigating uncertainty, you have to have your attitude in check. You need to ask yourself, I had set out this for myself. It seems as though the road is getting harder, but what is my attitude to this? Am I having a positive attitude, or am I having a negative attitude? Do I think I have lost the plot even before anything has started? So it's important for us to actually ask ourselves what our attitude is, so that that can be the foundation, that can be the starting point for us to actually eliminate the challenges before us. So we need to be flexible. Things change and nothing is set in stone. We need to be flexible, because challenges happen and there's nothing that we can do about it. It's part of life. But how are being flexible, how are being versatile to the issues at hand? And being versatile and flexible also ties in with the attitude that you have, right? That is one. Two is knowing and being steadfast in what you have set out for yourself, but understanding that there are things that are going to happen. But when I have those challenges, how am I going to adapt to what is happening? Yes, the challenge doesn't define us, nor does it make everything end, but the challenge is there. So how do we move on from it? And I'll give you an example. So when I started articles, I was very overwhelmed by the work, and also overwhelmed by having to study, and also overwhelmed by the fact that I was doing my thesis. So I was doing all these three things at the same time. And I was also pressured because I felt like I wasn't giving enough time to my family. I also wasn't giving enough time to my partner. So there was that pressure to a point where I felt like, look, I'm in a great space. I love what I'm doing. I'm working with exceptional people. Like, I'm working with the brightest minds. I am grateful for the opportunity of doing articles, right? I'm also grateful for the opportunity of having to do my master's. But there's this aspect that I seem to be forgetting or neglecting, and that is my loved ones. So I had to ask myself, Snalo, you are emerging into adulthood. You have all these responsibilities. I'm an article clerk. I'm supposed to show up at a certain time. I'm supposed to do A, B, C, and D. Okay, so at this time, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I need to execute that. Oh, above all these things that I've mentioned, I also had to also continue the podcast. So I had to ask myself, I had to list the things that I had, right? In listing the things that I had to then try and prioritize and say, okay, at a certain time, doesn't matter what is happening, I have to call my loved ones. I have to sit down, call them, and spend some time with them. At this point, at least each day, I need to read an article, or I need to read 3 pages. With respect to my studies for boards, I had to do that as well. Now, the uncertainty behind that chapter in my life was, one, passing board exams. And I have an episode. If you are someone who recently did articles, please check that episode out. I think it has valuable insights on how to navigate articles. So that was the one thing that I was so fixated on, and you would stress about that. That is one. 2 was, I felt like I was losing a part of myself because I couldn't put time in to do the podcast. So I also had to say, okay, so I have to put in time to do this. Let me slot in time. So it's very important that when you are navigating a time of uncertainty, you invest in doing your best and having the faith that it's going to go well. I can't tell you what is going to happen in a year from now. I don't have control over that. But I can surely tell you what I have control over doing today. So we need to build flexibility, and we need to build resilience through tough times. The tough times last, unfortunately. It's part of life. But in them lasting, we can emerge from that. They say tough times last, but tougher people last longer, something like that. All I'm trying to say is we need to build resilience in the things that we want, in the pursuit of our dreams. And it's important that we do that, all right? And in navigating resilience, in being resilient, guys, this is not a one-man project. Life is not a one-man project. Life is a collaborative effort, and we need to understand that in whatever we do, we are not islands. We need communities, we need mentors. I don't think there can be growth without a community of support, a community that will give advice, a community that will cheer you on in the things that you want to do. So it's important that in navigating uncertainty, we also look at those things. We look at who is around us, who forms part of our circle, who do we run to when things go tough. It's important to find those people and to go into such rooms that are going to uplift us, people that are going to inspire us, people that are going to drive us and not be complicit even when we're doing things wrong. Not even wrong, even if we are being lazy and we're actually not fulfilling our potentials. So it's important that even in navigating uncertainty, we need to understand that we cannot do it alone. We need teams. We need a team. And with time, you will find people that align with you and your values and your dreams as well. So I implore you, I invite you, I urge you, I beg you to do that. Do not look at uncertainty as a means to an end. Let it excite you, rather, because you don't know what is going to happen. Because it's mysterious, right? Let it excite you. Let it excite you. Let it fuel you. Let it drive you to be better, to do better, to grow in what you're doing. So today, as we close this podcast episode, I want you to turn the fog. In isiXhosa we call it inkungu. Turn the fog into fuel. That fog is the fog of uncertainty. Turn it into fuel and let it be the driver. So if you're writing, or if you're driving, or if you're going through anything where you actually feel like, okay, I'm living in uncertain times, I don't know what is going on, and as it's important for you to please remember this one thing and ask yourself this: what is one area where uncertainty is calling me to grow? That one area where uncertainty is where your growth lies. Don't be scared of it. Don't run away from it. Face it head on and be fearless. Be confident in tackling it. So the challenge I leave for you today is: do one thing this week you've been avoiding, due to the fear of the unknown. Do one thing that you've been avoiding due to the fear of the unknown. Anyways, that marks the end of today's episode. Please remember to comment, share, subscribe, share this episode, and let us grow our community, and let us reach more people so that we can actually, empower one another to realize our dreams, and for us to actually grow in the things that we do. Even if we don't make it, there's other opportunities, but through that pursuit we will have grown from, trying. Ukuzama zange wabulala mntu. Ukuzama zange wabulala mntu. So let's try. Let's be intentional about our growth, and let's use uncertainty as the launch pad to our goals and dreams, to realizing our goals and dreams. But that marks the end of today's episode, and thank you for tuning in and staying this far. I hope you have a great week and you tackle uncertainty. Until next time, peace.